よーし、いいものができたかな。おお、お願いします、リラ先生。
Atelier Ryza is meant to be somewhat of a rebirth for the series. While we did see Atelier Lulua earlier in the year and the Arlen Trilogy remasters last December, it has been quite a while since the Atelier series really made significant steps forward, particularly in the graphical and gameplay departments. Perhaps my only minor regret is choosing the Nintendo Switch version, not because it's bad or has performance issues, but rather Ryza's graphical upgrades are much less pronounced on the Switch version, obviously to keep the game running as well as it does. It still looks good, but it looks so damn gorgeous maxed out on the PC, and I think it would have been neat to really maximize the graphical upgrade over its predecessors on my playthrough. Even on PC though, it is quite subtle, but it's instantly noticeable. The art style really hasn't changed all that much, but there's a sharpness and a richness to Ryza that hasn't been seen in the series till now, and everything is a little more detailed than it has been prior. Almost everything in the game has been changed or switched up, and yet it still feels unmistakably like an Atelier game. Obviously every Atelier game has a different story, but you often find that they hit many of the same beats. Ryza in this regard deviates most from the core formula they've had since at least the PS3 era, which isn't to say it's better or worse, it's just a different direction and really helps Ryza feel like a fresh new beginning. Perhaps the biggest change is Ryza herself. She is a very different main protagonist for the series, foregoing the adorable dresses and skirts and very cute demeanors that we're used to in favor of a more practical adventuring attire and a personality that is a little rough. She has been described as a bit of a tomboy in pre-release materials, and that's exactly what she is. There's no mistaking that thickness though. Even if she wasn't explicitly designed to be as visually pleasing as previous protagonists, the Thickmaster General makes up for it in her own way. Another difference I found was a greater focus on characters other than the main protagonist. One of your party members from the very beginning, Lent, has just as much character and narrative development as Ryza does, maybe even more for big chunks of the game. It's not exactly lighthearted stuff either. His dad is an abusive drunk, for example. The story does stay true to a few things Atelier is known for. It's not a grand plot where you go out to save the world. In fact, for the first 10 or so hours, it's kind of hard to figure out what Ryza's meta goal actually is, other than her simply wanting to go on adventures and see the world. You'll go through very small scale things like convincing your friend's dad that you are strong enough to protect his daughter if she goes out on adventures with you by completing trials, which turn out to be little more than errands. But you'll also discover some mysteries about the world, confront serious dangers, and learn what it means to be an alchemist. The characters start off basically having never heard of alchemy before, which is certainly not the norm in an Atelier game. And speaking of alchemy, it's changed, or rather it's been expanded quite a lot as well. There's good news for those of you out there that were put off by some of the earlier entries having time limits to complete crafts and objectives. There are no time limits here. You can progress at your leisure. The alchemy in Ryza is easily my favourite in the series. You still learn some recipes from books, but mainly you'll learn new crafts by making certain choices on others. Each alchemy craft works like a little sphere grid. There's a set number of specific ingredients needed to synthesize the item, but there are a bunch of nodes for each recipe that add bonuses or increase the quality of the final item, and or even evolve the craft into a brand new recipe. You can also break items down into gems, which can then be used to power up things you've already crafted, allowing you to go back and fill in nodes that you couldn't reach in the original synthesis. In my Atelier Ryza preview, I mentioned the two main gameplay aspects as being alchemy, which is the crafting system, and combat, but I always forget to include the collecting aspect of the alchemy. Ingredients are everywhere and in just about everything, and you'll need to craft tools like a fishing rod and an axe to hunt them all down. You can hit a tree and uni or fruit might fall off. You can take a farming scythe to it and you'll get some bark, and chopping it with an axe will yield some wood. There's a level of dynamism in the collection mechanics in Atelier that turns what should be a very tedious aspect into a fun little treasure hunt. So collecting has stayed mostly the same, but combat is another area that evolved pretty greatly over its predecessors. It's got the underpinnings of an ATB system, but it's very fast paced. It isn't particularly complex, but it has some interesting ideas and there is very little downtime. In addition to choosing the actions your currently targeted character will take on their turn, you'll also be managing an AP resource. Hitting an enemy adds 1 AP. You'll need AP to perform skills other than your basic attack, but it can also be used in other ways. For 10 AP, you can upgrade your tactics level. Now your basic attack turns into something reminiscent of Paper Mario, where you can press A during your attack to hit a second time. You can also upgrade your tactics to level 3 with an additional 20 AP. Spending 10 AP will also let you take an immediate action, even if it isn't your turn. Combined with being able to switch party members at will and keeping an eye on callouts to trigger special party attacks, you are kept pretty busy in battles and it almost doesn't feel like a turn-based system at all. The final thing I want to talk about is the music. And how do I put this? The Atelier series, for the most part, has an OST I'd basically describe as fitting, but not much more. There are usually a couple of standout tracks among a sea of totally forgettable ones in any given entry. Ryza brings this ratio way up to almost a 1-for-1 though. There are more than just a few great tracks, and while there are definitely some fitting but forgettable tracks, they are much less frequent. I think they did a great job with this OST. Here's a little bit of one of my favorite tracks. Atelier Ryza is a great step forward for the series in so many ways. I have heard some comments that it's shorter or even a lot shorter than previous entries, but that simply isn't true. Can the main story be beaten in 20 hours? Sure, but that is true for pretty much every Atelier game. Atelier Ryza, just like almost every entry before it, is what you make of it. It has the optional exploration concept of an open world game without being open world. You can rush the main story, or you can get distracted by trying to unlock more of the alchemy system, or by completing milestone-like objectives, or by doing side quests, or by trying to discover all the ingredients. There is plenty to do in Atelier Ryza, and with the gorgeous, colourful world and the Thicc Master General herself to look at all day, you probably aren't going to want to rush through it too quickly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks for the liking, subscribing, and the sharing!